The champagne had barely stopped fizzing in the plastic cups when Don, my manager, cornered me in the hallway. He still had frosting on his tie from the lopsided cake someone from HR bought at Costco. Everyone else was laughing, hugging, posting selfies with the banner that said "Historic Launch" in Comic Sans. I was still in the afterglow of watching my system survive its first real stress test. Clean dashboards, zero downtime, smooth as silk. Then Don ruined it. "No bonus for you this year. Policy reasons." He said like it was nothing. Like he was telling me the coffee machine was out of filters. Then he clapped me on the shoulder, grinning as if I should thank him for the slap. For a moment, the air went flat. My ears filled with static, like when you drive through a tunnel. I blinked at him, waiting for the punchline, the grin that meant he was kidding. But he'd already pulled out his phone, already scrolling through something more important than the woman who had just saved his career. I nodded once. No anger. No questions. Just a clean, flat got it. But inside, something clicked. Not rage. Not yet. Something colder. The kind of cold that comes when you realize someone thinks you're disposable. 30 minutes later, I was at my desk, the noise of celebration still buzzing faintly from the break room. I opened my encrypted folder, the one I never told anyone about. A digital drawer of insurance, old emails, Slack threads, design diagrams, and at the very bottom, the contract, the analytics license. I highlighted the clause I'd fought to insert 2 years ago. Appendix C, subsection 4, paragraph B. A single sentence, dense with legal muscle. In the event that the designated technical lead, as defined in Addendum A, Kate Morrison, is removed from compensated employment status for any period exceeding 72 hours, this license agreement shall be considered null and void, with all associated access rights terminated without notice. I could almost hear my own voice from that negotiation. Me on the phone with the vendor, begging, pushing, refusing to back down until they added it. Don had been absent, of course. He'd pawned off the contract review on me because, in his words, legalese makes my head hurt. I made sure my name was there, not out of arrogance, but survival. I knew people like him. The moment you stopped being useful, you stopped being human. And now here we were. I didn't run to HR. I didn't confront Don. That's not how you win. Instead, I opened a new email. Short, professional, no anger between the lines. Just 4 words in the subject line. FYI, potential issue. In the body, I wrote, looping you in on the analytics license, specifically Appendix C. There may be compliance implications tied to compensation structure. Attaching for your review, attach the PDF, original signature, time-stamped, no dramatics, no bold text, no threats. Let the document do the talking. By the time the email left my outbox, I felt the shift. Not outside yet. The office was still full of sugar highs and corporate backpatting, but inside me. The ground was tilting, the fuse already lit. I leaned back in my chair, pretending to scroll through JIRA tickets when I saw her. Rebecca, lead counsel. She was crossing the hallway with a folder under her arm, phone in her hand, scanning her inbox as she walked. She stopped mid-step, froze. Her eyes darted back to the screen. She scrolled again. Then she slowed, pressing her thumb against the folder like she needed to anchor herself to the floor. She set the folder down on a cubicle wall, adjusted her glasses, and stared at Don's office door. Her face had gone pale, tight. When she finally pushed his door open, I caught a fragment of her voice. Not loud, not panicked, just sharp, surgical. Please tell me you paid her? The laughter in the hallway didn't stop. HR was still buzzing about karaoke night. Sales was still high-fiving over fake numbers, but in that tiny office, I knew the ground had shifted. Don's voice fumbled something about policy and upper-level decisions. Rebecca didn't answer. She closed the door instead. The sound was small, but it echoed in my chest like a gunshot. I turned back to my monitor, pulse steady. No smile, no gloating. Just the faint satisfaction of knowing the grenade I'd buried 2 years ago was finally ticking in their hands. They thought withholding my bonus was just a cost-saving measure. A box ticked on a spreadsheet. They didn't realize they'd just turned off the oxygen valve on the system that fed their entire company. And I? I was the only one who remembered where the switch was. The office looked the same the next morning. Cheap carpet, humming fluorescent lights, the smell of burned coffee drifting from the kitchen. But something had shifted. Silence had settled over the floor. Not the kind that comes from focus, but the kind that spreads in waves. Conversations dropped the moment I walked past. Slack notifications slowed to nothing. Calendar invites vanished without explanation. First, the daily stand-up disappeared. One moment it was on my calendar. The next it was gone. Then, my access to the DevOps channel blinked out, replaced with a red banner. You no longer have access to this workspace. I didn't ask questions, didn't protest. I opened my terminal, sipped my tea, and started exporting logs. By mid-morning, whispers began. Kevin, one of the engineers, leaned against my desk with a forced smile. Hey, random question. Did anyone actually confirm the vendor clauses with legal? Something in appendix? Whatever? I shrugged. Not sure. Why? He frowned, scratching his neck. Heard Rebecca's been digging. Looked serious, that didn't surprise me. I still remembered the way she froze yesterday, whispering, "Please tell me you paid her?" She'd recognized it immediately. The clause wasn't some minor footnote. It was a live wire, and she knew it. The rest of the team tried to keep the mood going. Sales was still high-fiving over inflated numbers. HR joked about karaoke night. But beneath it, nerves were showing. Don strutted down the halls, talking louder than usual, his fake laugh echoing off the walls. Every sentence was stuffed with confidence that didn't quite stick. I watched from the break room later, staring at the sad remains of the launch cake. The word winners was scrawled across it in red icing, the last S sagging into crumbs. Appropriate, I thought. That afternoon, Rebecca called a meeting. No subject line, no prep doc, just quiet shoulder taps pulling people into conference room C. I wasn't invited, but I could see through the glass. She sat at the head of the table, calm, deliberate. Don was across from her, face flushed, spinning a pen between his fingers like a nervous tick. HR chewed gum like a teenager. A junior analyst looked like he'd rather vanish through the floor. Even from a distance, I could see what was on Rebecca's laptop screen. The license. The clause. The exact one I had highlighted in my email. At one point, she leaned forward, speaking low, sharp. Her eyes locked on Don like she was pinning him to the wall. He tried to laugh, shrugged too quickly, gestured like it was all nothing. Rebecca didn't blink. When the meeting ended, Don stormed out first, jaw tight, barking into his headset. HR followed, chewing faster now. Rebecca lingered a moment, typing quickly before closing her laptop with quiet finality. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. By the end of the day, the isolation had escalated. My JIRA tickets were reassigned. Access to the monitoring dashboards revoked. Piece by piece, they were erasing me from the very system I had built. I opened a fresh spreadsheet and began cataloging every dependency. Daily sales dashboards powered by my pipeline. Customer churn reports tied to my scripts. Forecasting models for the CFO, built from my code. Transformations scheduled with cron jobs I'd written during a blizzard while Don stayed home working remotely. Line after line, I mapped the company's heartbeat. By the time I stopped, dozens of systems filled the page. Each one linked to me. Each one hinging on that license. Each one vulnerable. I encrypted the file, stored it on an offline drive. Not revenge, insurance. When I finally left, the building felt hollow. The laughter from yesterday had vanished, replaced by the uneasy quiet of people sensing something was wrong but too afraid to name it. As I stepped into the cool night air, I felt steady, calm. They thought I was cornered, cut off, erased. but every step they took to push me aside only tightened the rope around their own necks. And when it snapped, they'd realize too late. I was the only one who knew how to keep the oxygen flowing. The first sign wasn't a siren. It was an absence. The report that always lands in the CFO's inbox didn't arrive. No bounce, no error, just silence where numbers should be. A junior analyst pinged a channel I no longer saw. Are the dashboards down, or am I doing something wrong? The kind of question that sounds innocent until 5 more people ask it in different rooms. Then the ping stacked. Product couldn't load churn. Sales couldn't refresh pipeline. Marketing screenshots showed empty tiles where KPIS used to be. DevOps swore there were no overnight deploys, no alarms. Everything looked fine, which is its own kind of problem. I sat at my desk and watched it build like pressure in a pipe. An email slid into my inbox from Rebecca, short and surgical, CCing a handful of people who sign things. Confirm current compensation alignment for designated technical lead per Appendix C to maintain license compliance. No exclamation points. No threat. Just a scalpel laid on a tray. Don replied with a paragraph of foam. He used words like policy, timing, and review window. All air, no wait. Rebecca followed with a copy of the signature page and one sentence. Non-compensated status triggers termination of license access. You could feel the temperature drop without seeing a single face. Across the floor, I heard chairs slide, doors close. The quiet kind of panic that keeps its shoes on. On my screen, I opened the vendor portal and did what anyone with a pulse and a plan does. Checked logs. The last authorized handshake matched my system's heartbeat. Then a string of denials. Token rejected, license context invalid. Not a glitch. A judgment. I poured myself coffee in the break room and watched the hallway. People walked faster, carrying laptops like life preservers. Someone from marketing stared at a frozen dashboard for a long time, like if she willed hard enough the numbers would return out of pity. A message arrived from an address no one ever notices until it matters. Vendor compliance at ... It said exactly what I expected it to say. Plain, unadorned, impossible to argue with. License status. Non-compliant per Appendix C. Access suspended pending remediation by designated account lead. The designated account lead was me. I didn't reply. That wasn't my job anymore. Across the glass, conference room C filled again. No invite for me, as usual. I could read the room anyway. CFO, arms folded, face gray. VP of sales rubbing his temples. HR flipping to the wrong page, then back again. Rebecca at the head, calm as a winter lake, the contract open like scripture. Don tried to speak with the shoulders, all shrug and bravado. He was performing confidence for an audience that had stopped buying tickets. They put a printout on the table. My architecture diagram, branding swapped. My notes rephrased in the third person like the system had grown on a tree. I recognized my own mistakes from 2 years ago, now framed as triumphs by people who had once asked me what a warehouse was. The irony would have been funny if I were in the mood. The door opened. The CEO stepped in with the expression of someone who walked into a room expecting cake and found an audit. He didn't sit right away. He looked at Rebecca. Rebecca didn't blink. She pointed at a highlighted line, said something measured. He asked a question with his hands. She answered with her eyes. You learn a lot about an organization when lawyers stop choosing adjectives. Outside the room, the floor was losing air. People stopped making small talk. Phones rang and didn't get answered. A director jogged to IT like jogging could fix contract law. I went back to my desk and made myself useful to the only person who would thank me for it later. Future me. I exported dependency maps, rebuilt notes that lived in my head into a shape that would survive without me. Every cron, every feed, every alert path. I deleted my personal test keys from sandboxes I no longer trusted to stay private. Not sabotage, housekeeping. Someone from HR drifted near my desk with a smile he'd probably practiced. Quick favor, could you jot down some transition notes? just so the team can keep momentum. The word you use when you're sure the car still has gas because it's still rolling downhill. I looked up. Happy to, once legal confirms our license is valid. He blinked. The smile didn't know where to go, so it fell. He left with a nod that meant nothing. Another email from Rebecca landed, this one to a wider group. Crisp final. Retroactive adjustments do not resolve breach. Disclosure preparation has begun. A whole building inhaled and forgot how to exhale. Soon after, the banners appeared, an elegant red strip across executive dashboards. License unrecognized. Contact account holder. They could fire me if they wanted. They just couldn't run the company after they did. That's the part people like Dawn never learn until the lights go out. Value isn't loud. It's the hum you stop hearing until it's gone. The CEO left the conference room without speaking to anyone. Rebecca followed, face set. Dawn came out last, colorless. He avoided my eyes, which was a shame because I was ready to give him the gift he'd been dodging all week. The truth fixed in the calm of my stare. I packed my bag like it was any other day. Laptop, charger, the offline drive with my notes. My plants could wait. Plants know how to survive droughts. At the elevator, I caught a reflection I recognized from 2 years ago, the night I'd convinced a skeptical vendor rep to type my name into a clause that wasn't standard. Not vanity, insurance. There are rooms where the only way to be seen later is to write yourself into the rules today. The door slid open. I stepped in, breathed, and let the day close. Halfway to the lobby, my phone lit up. Unknown number. No caller ID mask. No assistant buffer. The kind of call that skips every rung on the ladder because the ground underneath it just moved. I let it ring once more, long enough to hear the buildings hum in my ear. Then I answered. The voice on the other end was rough, stripped of the polish you hear in all hands meetings. Kate. The CEO said. Just my name, like it was suddenly fragile. We need to talk. I leaned against the counter in my apartment, one hand resting on the cat curled on the windowsill. About what? I asked, calm, like I didn't already know. The system, he said. No spin, no smile. Just the word that now defined his nightmare. It's down. The vendor says it's a licensing issue. Rebecca tells me you're critical. Critical. The word sat in the air between us. What will it take to resolve this? He asked. No greeting, no apology. Just desperation wrapped in a necktie. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch, piano wire thin. In the distance, traffic hummed through the city. Inside, I sipped water, steady as stone. I already flagged the issue, I said finally. 30 minutes after Dawn told me I wasn't getting my bonus. He exhaled like a man caught holding a live grenade. Look, that was a mistake. A misunderstanding. We'll fix it. Just tell me what you need. I almost laughed, but didn't. Not yet. Instead, I walked to my desk and opened the folder I'd named They're Going to Beg. Inside sat a PDF my attorney and I had prepared weeks ago. We'd drafted it as insurance, knowing the launch would test more than just servers. The title was simple: Reinstatement and Buyout Proposal. I'll send you something, I said. Read it carefully. You'll have 24 hours silence. Then the sound of a pen tapping against wood. Kate, we don't have 24 hours. Investors are already asking questions. The board wants answers by morning. Then you'd better move quickly, I said, and hung up. I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. What I felt was the weight of control sliding back into my hands, quiet and solid. The next morning, the building had the energy of a funeral home. Slack channels were graveyards of unanswered questions. Phones rang without pickup. Teams huddled in corners, whispering words like breach and exposure. Marketing sent an all-staff email blaming IT. IT blamed the vendor. The vendor responded with a single brutal line. Your license is invalid due to breach. Contact your designated account lead for reinstatement. The designated account lead was me. Rebecca didn't waste time with blame. She sent a message to the executive team. Retroactive compensation does not resolve breach. Vendor has confirmed. Disclosure to board and investors mandatory. No fluff, no soft edges. Just a scalpel cutting through denial. I sat at my desk, calm, while HR made their move. A junior staffer, Tyler, barely out of school, approached holding a paper form like it might explode. He was sweating through his shirt. Don was wondering if maybe you could draft some transition notes? Transition notes? I repeated. Yeah, just so the team can keep things moving. His voice cracked mid-sentence. I set my tea down, met his eyes, and said evenly, Tyler, I can't document a system you no longer have legal access to. His mouth opened, then closed. He nodded too quickly, mumbled something about checking back later, and scurried off. They thought they could fix this with paperwork. A backdated bonus, a quiet form slipped into payroll, like compliance could be tricked with timestamps. But Rebecca caught it before the ink dried. She sent another email, this one company-wide. Payment logs confirm violation. Retroactive adjustments do not restore compliance. Platform remains unlicensed. That line, remains unlicensed, spread through the building like smoke. By afternoon, I walked past conference room B and saw them inside. Dawn pacing, voice raised. The CFO pale, head in hands. Someone from sales with tears in her eyes, clutching a granola bar she wasn't eating. Rebecca at the end of the table, calm as ever, binder open, pen clicking softly like a metronome counting down the seconds. I didn't slow down. Didn't look in. I just kept walking, my bag heavy with the offline drive that held every dependency map, every log, every piece of evidence. Insurance. Always insurance. When I got home that night, the offer came through. An email from the CEO. Subject line. Proposed resolution. Attached was their counter, a promise of the withheld bonus, a note of appreciation, vague assurances about future recognition. I read it once, twice, then closed the file. Too little, too late. I opened my prepared proposal, attached it to a new message, and forwarded it back. 3 bullet points, simple and clear. Immediate wire transfer of unpaid compensation plus 40% breach penalty. Buyout of license clause for a mid-6-figure sum executed through outside counsel. Written statement acknowledging contribution to be read at the next all hands. I added one sentence beneath it. Offer window, 24 hours. Then I hit send. I sat back, poured myself a glass of wine, and let the silence settle around me. Outside, the city buzzed with life. Inside, my plants leaned toward the window, untouched by the chaos consuming the people who thought I didn't matter. They had made their move. Now it was my turn. The offer window sat in their inbox like a countdown. I didn't pace. I watered my plants, answered a message from a friend about weekend plans, and fed the cat. The dashboard stayed dark. The building lived on forwarded emails and wishful thinking. The reply came sooner than I expected. First, a counter, the kind that tests whether you're bluffing. Half the breach penalty. No buyout. A future spotlight at some vague town hall. I wrote one sentence back. Per attached, terms are non-negotiable. Then I closed my laptop and made dinner. A second message arrived, this time from Rebecca, not the CEO. No flattery, no apology. Please confirm wiring instructions. Attached was a short amendment drafted by outside counsel to execute the clause buyout upon receipt of funds. I sent the wire details and the PDF my attorney had pre-cleared. If they moved quickly, the system could breathe again without pretending I didn't exist. Payment confirmation landed first. A screenshot from Treasury, numbers that actually mattered. A few minutes later, the ACH notice from my bank. Not a promise. Money. I felt it more as a weight lifting than a victory. The breach penalty followed. Same day. No dithering. They had finally found the brake pedal. Rebecca called. Funds sent, amendment circulating. Vendor is ready to reinstate upon confirmation that you're in compensated status, she said. Voice even. Translation. We paid you. Please let the lungs fill. I'll notify compliance, I said. I opened the vendor portal, attached the executed proof of compensation with the timestamp, and replied to the compliance address that had shut the door. Status restored. Amendment pending. Please reinstate access per Section 7DA, short pause, then the response. License recognized. Services resuming. No confetti, no fanfare, just the hum returning to a building that had forgotten what it sounded like. Only then did the CEO call again. He skipped posture. We should have paid you the bonus, he said, quiet, like someone admitting the obvious too late. I flagged it before the launch, I said. You had time. He didn't argue. We'll honor your proposal in full. The statement at the all hands. Would you prefer to read it or have me read it? The question hung there like a bridge I no longer needed. You can read it, I said. It's your house. The all hands happened the next morning. No music, no jokes. People looked tired, like the blackout had sucked color out of their faces. I watched from the back, arms crossed, the room a blur of hoodies and blazers. The CEO read the statement as drafted, word for word. He acknowledged the design, the implementation, the nights and weekends, the contract I negotiated, and the breach they caused by withholding compensation. No hedging, no team effort air quotes. My name was said out loud, attached to the work it belonged to. The room clapped in a way that wasn't a party. It sounded more like relief. Don didn't look at me. He stared at the floor, jaw locked. Later, I saw a calendar hold block out his afternoon with HR. That part wasn't my business. After the meeting, engineers stopped by my desk one by one. Not performative. Quiet thanks, a nod, a hand to a heart. Kevin said, I learned more from watching how you handled this than any code review. I believed him. Rebecca visited last. She leaned on the cubicle wall, the same way she had leaned on the claws. I don't say this often, she said, but you saved them from themselves. I saved my work, I said. They just happened to use it. She nodded, almost a smile. The buyout amendment is fully executed. Going forward, the license isn't tied to you. If you choose to leave, you won't be holding a grenade on the way out. That's the point, I said. No hostages. I had already decided. Staying would mean pretending the previous week hadn't happened. Respect isn't a plaque. It's trust you don't have to beg for. I drafted my resignation with a short transition plan. 2 weeks, documented handoffs, a list of risks that didn't need to become disasters if someone actually read them. No drama. I didn't want to burn the place down. I wanted to close the door and know it would stay closed. When I sent the note, the CEO replied within minutes. Appreciation, an offer of a consulting retainer if I ever wanted it, more words than I needed. I accepted the thanks, declined the retainer, and attached the final dependency map with notes in plain English. Insurance for them, closure for me. On my last day, the dashboards were alive, the hum steady. A new engineer shadowed me through the final handoff. We clicked through systems, I answered questions, and when we were done, I unplugged my keyboard and put it in my bag. I left the plants on the window ledge. The team had started watering them on their own. Good sign. Outside, the air felt clean. I walked to the corner cafe and ordered a coffee I didn't need. My phone buzzed. An email from the vendor confirming the clause buyout had been recorded and the account now sat in ordinary status. No special protections, no tripwires. Just a normal contract for a system that would keep breathing without me. I sat by the window and let the quiet settle. Not triumph, not vengeance, just equilibrium. If there's a message in all this, it's simple. Build well, document better, and write yourself into the places where memory gets fuzzy. Contracts, change logs, signatures. Don't threaten. Don't bluff. Say what you'll do and do it. Protect your work without breaking what other people rely on. The system doesn't have to go dark for you to be seen, but sometimes darkness is the only language a careless room understands. They learned to read it. I learned to leave. And the hum, at last, belonged to both of us for exactly what it was. I knew something was wrong the second I walked into the ballroom. The chandeliers were dripping with gold light, the kind of expensive glow that hides the cracks in everything underneath. White linens, overpriced floral arrangements, champagne flowing like it was water. It was supposed to be a celebration of our company's success. My success. 11 years of building the analytics division into something real, profitable and respected. But as I stood there in my black dress, clutching a glass of bubbly that tasted faintly of regret, I felt the atmosphere shift. Too many eyes on me, too many whispers curling around the room like smoke. And then, like the villain in a bad corporate fairy tale, our CEO, Richard Calloway, strutted onto the stage. Richard loved a spotlight. He loved nothing more than hearing his own voice echo through expensive speakers while people nodded like disciples. Tonight, he had gone all out. A branded stage backdrop, a live band playing Coldplay covers, and fog machines. Yes, fog machines at a corporate gala. Because nothing says integrity like artificial mist. He raised his glass, his teeth so white they practically glowed in the dim light. Tonight, he began, we celebrate not just our numbers but our transformation. A new era of efficiency, a bold new chapter I should have known then. Efficiency. That word always hides the knife. And then it came. He paused, smirked, and pointed toward me. Starting with her termination. For a second, the room froze. Then, like some sick cue, laughter rippled through the audience. Executives chuckled, VPs smirked, and even a few of my peers, the ones I trained, clapped. My badge deactivated instantly, the silent confirmation of my execution. I bit my tongue so hard I could taste iron. My nails dug crescents into my palm. I refused to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to scream. I stood there as if carved from stone while he moved on, already talking about innovation pipelines and agile synergies, like I had never even existed. The humiliation burned, but the betrayal? That cut deeper. I'd given over a decade to this company. Late nights, weekends, holidays sacrificed to keep this place afloat. And this was how they erased me. Publicly, cruelly, efficiently. And then, my phone buzzed. At first, I thought it was another automated HR notification. Maybe an email confirming my health insurance was gone. But when I glanced down at the screen, my breath caught. It was a text. From a number I knew. Marcus Hale, the top investor in the company. A man who rarely even acknowledged my presence unless it was about quarterly reports. The message was short, precise. Are you free? Let's end his career. For the first time that evening, I almost smiled. I didn't leave immediately. I let the humiliation play out. Let Richard enjoy his little performance. But inside, something was shifting. The numbness cracked, replaced by something sharper. Purpose. I slipped out of the ballroom just as the fog machines hissed again, my heels echoing against marble. Outside, the night air hit me like a slap. Cold, clean, grounding. My carry-on bag felt heavier than usual, though I hadn't even packed it. When you've been betrayed like that, in front of peers and strangers alike, something inside you hardens. You stop caring about decorum. You stop caring about survival mode. What's left is focus. I leaned against a stone pillar, pulled out my phone again, and stared at Marcus's message. End his career. I thought about Richard's smirk, about the way people clapped when I was dismissed like a line item in a spreadsheet, about Jenny, my assistant, who had been crying quietly behind her champagne glass, about the years of building something real, only to be discarded in the name of efficiency. And I thought, maybe it's time someone taught Richard what efficiency really looks like. I typed back 2 words. I'm in. Within minutes, Marcus's assistant sent me an address. Not a boardroom, not a fancy restaurant, but a quiet townhouse 3 blocks away from the gala. Marcus never wasted time. If he wanted me there, it meant something big. I didn't look back at the ballroom. Didn't glance at the lights, the music, the people who had just erased me. Let them toast their new era. They had no idea the storm that was already brewing. As I walked toward that townhouse, my phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from Jenny. I'm with you. Always I stopped in my tracks. Jenny had been by my side for 5 years, loyal, precise, the kind of assistant who noticed everything. If she was still in, if she was willing to take the risk, then maybe I wasn't as alone as Richard wanted me to believe. I pocketed the phone and kept walking. The night smelled faintly of rain and smoke. The city hummed with its usual indifference. But inside me, the fire was just beginning to catch. Richard thought he had humiliated me into silence. He thought I'd fade into the background, another casualty of corporate realignment. But he had underestimated me. Because efficiency, real efficiency, is burning down a liar's empire with nothing but receipts and precision. And by the time I reached Marcus Hale's door, I already knew. Richard had just fired the wrong woman. Marcus Hale did not look like the kind of man who sent nuclear texts. He opened the townhouse door in a navy sweater and reading glasses, like a professor grading papers on a Sunday. No entourage, no security, just a single lamp on and a kettle steaming in the kitchen. I stepped inside, closed the door, and waited for the performance. There wasn't one. I'm sorry you were humiliated, he said. No theatrics, no handshake. Sit. I sat. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't. He poured tea, not whiskey. It felt deliberate, like he was setting the tone. Calm, slow, controlled. You know why you're here, he said. Because you sent a text that sounds like a felony. His mouth twitched. Because he lied to a room I pay for? I didn't answer. The humiliation from the gala still clung to me like smoke. Marcus set 2 folders on the coffee table. I'm not asking you to steal corporate property or hack anything, he said. We'll do this clean. Legal. You will not access systems you no longer have rights to. You will not ask anyone to break policy. You will not record anyone without consent in a one-party state. You're giving the rules speech, I said. I'm giving you cover, he replied. If this goes forward, it will end in auditors and regulators. We don't feed them tainted fruit. He opened the first folder, printed screenshots, not originals. Analyst notes, public filings, earnings call transcripts lined with yellow highlights. On the last page, a press photo of Richard standing in front of a slide labeled Nova Line, Q to launch. I sat on the prototype committee, I said. There is no Q2 launch. I know, he said, but he told the street there is. He's been promising a product he can't ship to preserve a multiple he doesn't deserve. You were the last person in leadership who would say that out loud. There it was, plain English, not a vendetta, evaluation. You want me to blow the whistle? I said. I want the truth, he said. And I want it in a format that stands up in a room full of lawyers. I looked at the second folder. It was empty. That one is yours, he said. Populate it with what you remember. Timelines, meetings, who was in the room when deadlines moved, any roadblocks you documented. Memory is admissible when it's annotated and corroborated. You were there. That matters. I don't have access anymore. I'm not asking for access, he said. I'm asking for a reconstruction. People forget that paper trails aren't just PDFs. They're calendars, slide templates, stand-up notes, vendor RFPs, procurement approvals, even travel itineraries. All of that can be requested later, if you flag what to look for. He slid over a legal card. If you proceed, you'll speak only through counsel. Attorney-client privilege applies from now. He paused. And Anna, don't text me about this again. Use the number on the card. Landline. Calls only Jenny, I said before I could stop myself. My assistant. She's still inside. She'll help, within policy. He nodded like he already knew. Then tell her to protect herself. No printing, no forwarding, no screenshots. She can keep a contemporaneous journal, dates and who told her what. That's legal. That's powerful, I studied him. Why me? Because you built what he's selling, he said. And because you're angry enough to do it right. I didn't trust that compliment, but I understood it. We laid out a plan that felt like a grocery list written in lawyer ink. I would draft a timeline from memory. Product milestones, revenue claims tied to Novaline, slips where Pilot was rebranded as Launch. Marcus's analysts would parallel it against public guidance. We'd identify individuals to interview later. Engineering managers who killed features, sales leaders who lost accounts, finance staff who reclassified churn. If something smelled off, it would go on a list for subpoenas, not Slack DMs. 3 weeks, Marcus said. That's what I think he has before he tries to push a deal. If this is real, we need to be ready before he hands a bomb to someone else. 3 weeks is not a lot of time, I said. It's enough to be credible, he answered. Credibility moves faster than spin. He stood, signaling the meeting was over. Leave the folder. Pick it up tomorrow at the coffee shop on 53rd at 10. Ask for newspaper. Cute, I said. Old, he corrected. I stepped back into the night feeling oddly sober. Not righteous, careful. This wasn't a movie. This was a process, and processes don't clap when you make the right choice. They ask for proof. Jenny called me as I turned the corner. Where are you? She whispered. Walking, I said. Listen. From now on, nothing digital that you wouldn't want read aloud in a deposition. If you see something, write it down in a paper notebook. Dates, times. Who said what? Old school, she asked. Admissible, I said. She exhaled. They're rewriting the Novaline roadmap, she said. Marketing updated the internal wiki to say launch window. Engineering still has no QA builds, and Richard scheduled a town hall for Monday topic. Our path to efficiency, she said, and I could hear the eye roll. Anna, are we really doing this? We're documenting, I said, and we're protecting you. I went home, pulled the second folder onto my kitchen table, and started drawing a line down a page. What was promised on the left, what existed on the right. My handwriting was slow at first, then faster as the dates kicked loose. March, prototype freeze missed. April, sales demo was a Figma mock. May, finance removed experimental tag from Novaline revenue and called it expansion. I remembered the meeting. Richard had framed it as aligning with market perception. I wrote the phrase exactly as he said it because words are fingerprints. At 1:13 a.m., I stopped and read the page. It didn't look like revenge. It looked like work I'd been doing for years. Clearing fog, naming things. The quiet kind of courage no one applauds. I tucked the notes into the empty folder and sealed it with a strip of tape I found in a junk drawer. Before bed, I texted Jenny one sentence. Paper only. You're not alone. As I turned off the light, a thought surfaced that I didn't push away. Richard had called my termination an era of efficiency. He wasn't wrong. Efficiency is doing the next necessary thing without flinching. In the morning, I would start asking questions the right way. And if the answers pointed where I thought they would, we wouldn't need theatrics or fog machines. We'd have the truth. And a clock. I arrived at the coffee shop on 53rd exactly at 10. The place smelled like burnt espresso and impatience. A barista with a nose ring glanced up when I ordered and handed me a small brown bag. Inside, beneath a muffin I didn't order, was the folder I'd left at Marcus's townhouse. My notes were still there, but now they were typed, formatted, and cross-referenced against public statements. His analysts had wasted no time. Next to each milestone I had listed, Prototype freeze, demo dates, revenue classifications, there were highlights in red. Inconsistent with public guidance. Contradicted by earnings call. No supporting documentation filed with SEC. They were building the skeleton of a case. All I had to do was keep giving them bones. That night, I met Jenny in a strip mall diner 2 towns over. She wore a baseball cap pulled low, her hair tucked away like she was in witness protection. She ordered chamomile tea but didn't drink it. "They're scrubbing mentions of Novaline," she said. "Internal wiki, project trackers, even Slack channels. Threads are disappearing mid-scroll. It's like someone is airbrushing history while we watch." "Dates?" I asked. "Yesterday afternoon, right after the gala, I wrote it down in my notebook. Day after termination, records scrubbed." Jenny leaned closer. "It's not just deletions. They're moving credits, too. I saw your name taken off 3 milestone reviews, replaced with corporate co-author." My jaw tightened. Erasure wasn't new in business, but seeing it happen in real time was different. "Back it up," I said. I did. Flash drive, she slid a small black stick across the table like contraband. "Encrypted." Triple-checked, I tucked it into my bag without looking. Evidence wasn't dramatic. It was tedious, careful, boring, and that's why it mattered. Over the next week, my days became a cycle of calls and notes. I reached out to people I hadn't spoken to in years, former colleagues who had left suddenly or quietly. Some hung up, some ignored me, but a few answered. Rita, a product lead, laughed bitterly when I asked about her departure. They told me I couldn't adapt to the agile vision. Translation, I questioned why we were promising features we hadn't even scoped. Evan, an analyst, said HR had found inconsistencies in his code after he refused to massage the forecast. "One day I was a rising star," he said. "Next day I was escorted out with a box." Funny thing, my forecast turned out to be right. Too right. Patterns emerged, the same words repeated like a script. Misalignment, redundancy, not culture fit. Euphemisms for dissent. By the 5th call, I had a page full of phrases that weren't just stories. They were evidence of a culture. A culture where questioning the fantasy meant you vanished. Jenny kept feeding me small pieces. An old budget draft that showed experimental revenue relabeled as growth. Meeting invites for product demos that never happened. One night she called, her voice shaking. "They caught me printing," she whispered. "Caught how?" "The system logs every job. I told them it was a duplicate of HR tax forms. They let it slide, but someone's watching." I closed my eyes, felt the heat behind them. "No more printing," I said. "Paper only from memory. Notes you can defend. No trails they can twist." She hesitated. "Anna, if they find out..." "They won't," I said. "Because we're not stealing. We're documenting silence." "Then, okay. But I'm scared." "So am I admitted. "That's why we're careful." The next day, Marcus called. His tone was as calm as always, but I could hear the undercurrent of urgency. "We've matched your notes against 2/4 of filings. The discrepancies are significant. Enough for questions, maybe subpoenas." "Significant isn't enough," I said. "It has to be undeniable." "Then keep going," he said. "The deeper he digs to cover himself, the easier he'll be to bury." That night, I opened Jenny's flash drive on my old Dell laptop. The screen flickered like a smoker's cough, but the files opened. Spreadsheets, draft presentations, metadata showing edits after midnight. My name stamped on documents I hadn't touched. I stared at the screen, a slow rage crawling up my throat. This wasn't just betrayal. This was identity theft. My reputation used as camouflage for lies. At 2:14 a.m., I picked up my notebook and wrote in block letters. "This is fraud." I didn't feel triumph. I felt cold, steady. The kind of clarity you only get when there's no way back. I called Marcus in the morning. He answered on the first ring. "I'm in," I said. And he's dumber than I thought. Good, Marcus replied. Then it's time to start collecting kindling. For the first time in days, I almost smiled, because Richard thought efficiency meant cutting people like me. But I was about to show him a different kind of efficiency, the kind that dismantles an empire piece by piece until all that's left is smoke. By the second week, the pattern wasn't a suspicion anymore. It was a map. Every falsified milestone, every inflated projection, every erased credit pointed in one direction. Richard. He wasn't just exaggerating. He was building a castle on sand and selling tickets for the tour. Marcus called me one night while I was sitting at my kitchen table, surrounded by notebooks. He's pitching investors, he said. Not the board. Outsiders. Rumors say he's trying to package Novaline as proof of growth before a sale. How soon? 3 weeks, maybe less. 3 weeks. That was our deadline. The idea of Richard walking away with a golden parachute while employees got gutted in a merger made my stomach turn. If we wanted to stop him, we needed more than whispers and patterns. We needed a confession, or something close enough to look like one. That's when Marcus laid out the trap. We'll bait him with validation, he said. A fake investor, a clean front. You join as consultant. He won't be able to resist bragging about Novaline to outsiders. It sounded insane, risky, but realistic. Richard thrived on admiration. If someone waved the promise of money and prestige, he'd talk himself into a corner. 2 days later, Verdant Axis existed. On paper, it was a boutique analytics investment firm with sustainable branding, a Delaware filing, and a LinkedIn page polished enough to fool anyone skimming fast. They even hired a compliance expert to script the meeting invites, and I was listed as business development consultant. Subtle, forgettable. Jenny helped with the cover. She borrowed a ring light from her cousin so I could look polished on Zoom, and she mocked up a fake background that looked like a WeWork in Tribeca. Plants, exposed brick, the whole thing. The call was set for Tuesday at 2 p.m. I didn't sleep the night before. When Richard's face appeared on the screen, I kept mine neutral. Professional, distant. He didn't recognize me. Or maybe he refused to. Men like him convince themselves their enemies disappear once they're out of sight. He launched into his pitch immediately. We're seeing over 60% growth quarter over quarter in our new vertical, he bragged. Novaline is driving interest in Tier 2 markets, reducing churn, and creating substantial engagement. I let him go. He spoke like a man in love with his own slides, confident, smug, detached from reality. He name-dropped Fortune 500 clients under NDA, hinted at partnerships that never existed, and described APIS as active when engineering hadn't even assigned a single ticket. It was everything we needed, and every word was being recorded. When the call ended, my hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I felt nothing. Not anger, not grief, just focus. It wasn't personal anymore. It was arithmetic, a fraud equation solving itself. I forwarded the recording to Marcus with one word: done. 5 minutes later, he called back. We've got him. SEC grade evidence. If we drop this at the right moment, he doesn't just lose his job. He loses everything. Not yet, I said. There was a pause. Why not? Because he's still running, I said. And I want him to trip before we pull the rug. Marcus chuckled, low and sharp. Fair enough. That night, Jenny called in a panic. They're shredding paper on the 4th floor, whole carts of documents, and someone flagged my badge for audit. They know something's leaking. I gripped the phone tighter. Jenny, listen to me. You're done. No more risks. Stay clean. They'll sniff around, but they won't find anything. You've done enough. Her voice cracked. But we don't have everything yet. We have enough, I said firmly. And I need you safe. There was silence, then a shaky exhale. Okay. After we hung up, I stared at my laptop. The recording sat there like a loaded weapon, neat and undeniable. But Marcus was right. Timing mattered. If we moved too soon, Richard would spin it. If we waited, he'd hang himself with his own rope. 2 weeks left. I poured myself a glass of water and sat by the window, looking at the city lights. For years, I'd believed in the work. Believed that numbers told the truth if you measured them right. Now I knew better. Numbers could lie. People could weaponize them. But people could also use them to expose the lie. Efficiency. Richard had turned the word into a weapon against me. But as I sat there, calm and clear, I realized what efficiency really was. Not fog machines, not slogans, not public firings. Efficiency was this: gathering the right pieces, building the case, and waiting for the exact second to strike. And when that second came, Richard Calloway wouldn't just fall. He'd collapse under the weight of his own invention. The call came on a Thursday morning, 2 weeks after the sting. Marcus didn't waste words. 6 p.m. emergency session. Counsel present. Bring your timeline. Assume nothing you say is off the record. Is Richard invited? He's leading it, Marcus said. For now. I arrived early with 2 binders and a notebook. No drama, no hero's entrance, just a woman who'd done her homework. The boardroom was colder than it needed to be. Walnut table, bottled water lined like soldiers. Outside the glass, New York did what it always does. Kept moving. Richard came in wearing a suit the color of denial. He nodded at me like we were still colleagues and not on opposite sides of a fault line. He opened with charm. He always did. Let's not lose the plot because of one anonymous tape, he said, smiling tight. We're executing. Novaline is in development. Any language that sounds aggressive was investor enthusiasm. Marcus didn't look at him. He looked at counsel, who pressed a button on a small speaker. My careful voice asked, how soon could an investor leverage Novaline's data pipelines? Richard's answer filled the room. Confident, specific, indefensible. A PIS active growth. North of 60%. Partners under NDA. Lies that sounded like leadership. I didn't watch Richard's face. I watched the board. Blink, blink, then stillness. Elaine, the director who never wasted a breath, folded her hands. Anna, she said, walk us through the timeline. I did. No speeches, no adjectives, just dates, meetings, phrases repeated word for word. Prototype freeze missed. Sales demo was a mock. Experimental revenue relabeled as expansion. Credits reassigned after my termination. I cited who was in the room and who could corroborate. When I finished, I slid the second binder forward. The crosswalk Marcus's analysts had built against public statements. Counsel spoke next. We recommend a legal hold across all systems immediately. Email, Slack, shared drives. No data deletion, no device wipes, no travel beyond normal course. Mr. Calloway, you will surrender your laptop and phone at the end of this meeting. Richard laughed. It didn't land. This is ridiculous. It's routine, counsel said. And necessary. The board voted, not termination, not yet. They placed him on administrative leave, effective immediately, and appointed an independent firm to begin a forensic review over the weekend. HR would notify the company in the morning. No fog machines, no band, just a motion, a second, and a unanimous show of hands. Outside the building, the air felt different. Thin, truthful. Jenny texted me a single emoji. A flame, then a stop sign. We lit it. Now hold the line. Friday was quiet in the loud way crisis is. IT locked accounts. A firm with a name like a law office installed e-discovery tools. Finance put the experimental label back where it belonged. Legal sent out a memo. Preserve everything. No one said my name out loud, but people knew. I bought a cheap sandwich and ate half of it. My stomach was busy. On Monday morning, an 8K hit the wire. CEO on leave pending investigation. Board cooperating with regulators. Guidance under review. The stock dipped, then steadied. Not confidence, exactly, but caution. Richard scheduled a personal statement at a co-working space with brick walls and moral support. It lasted 7 minutes. Reporters asked what active APIs meant if engineering had no tickets. He blamed timelines in flux. He left with his tie in his pocket. Inside the company, people did what people do in uncertainty. They clung to the nearest adult. Teams pinged managers for direction. HR put together talking points with the emotional range of a toaster. Jenny sent me a photo of a whiteboard in a conference room. No more slides until we have something to demo. Underneath, someone wrote, Amen. Tuesday night, the board reconvened. The independent firm presented preliminary findings: revenue reclassification without adequate disclosure, deck edits that overstated pipeline, internal objections documented and overridden. My name was on some of those objections. So were others who'd left. It wasn't a single mistake. It was a pattern. Counsel cleared her throat. We have sufficient grounds for termination for cause. The room went very quiet. Marcus didn't look triumphant. He looked tired. Elaine spoke last. Mr. Calloway, this is the end of your employment. Effective immediately. For cause. No severance. Your equity is subject to clawback pending final findings. Security will escort you out after you sign the acknowledgement. He didn't make a scene. He didn't beg. He just nodded like a man who could finally hear the click of a door he'd been closing on himself for months. He left. The board turned to me. We need a grown-up to stabilize the floor, Elaine said. 75 days, chief restructuring officer, limited mandate, transparency, guardrails, retention. After that, a proper search. It wasn't victory. It was a job. I took it. The next morning, I stood in front of a room that used to scare me and told the truth. No music, no fog. There's no Novaline launch next quarter, I said. We're not going to pretend otherwise. We're going to fix what's real and stop selling what isn't. If you have receipts, good or bad, bring them. No one gets punished for telling the truth. I restored credits on 3 projects, including my own, then added names that had been erased before mine. We issued retention grants to engineers and analysts who'd been asked to do magic tricks with numbers. I met with finance and told them clarity beats optimism. I met with legal and told them cooperation beats posture. I met with Jenny and told her she could sleep. When she cried, it wasn't dramatic. It was relief leaving the body. By week 3, the building felt different. Not fixed, just honest. The board hired an external CEO with a boring resume and a spine. I handed over the keys with a clean inbox and a list of things that still needed saying out loud. They offered me a permanent role. I said no. I didn't want a throne. I wanted my life back. Before I left, Jenny brought me one last envelope. A stack of old patent filings with the right names in the right places. Mine included. They were filed, she said. He tried to strip them. He didn't get to finish. I walked out of the building into air that didn't taste like smoke anymore. The city went on, indifferent and honest. I thought about the word that started all of this. Efficiency. Richard wielded it like a weapon. But efficiency without integrity is just speed toward a cliff. The shortest path to the truth is still the straight line. Dates, facts, names, receipts. If you've ever been erased, write it down. If you've ever been told to make the numbers sing, ask who's picking the song. And if someone fires you for telling the truth, remember there's a clean way to write yourself back in. I didn't get revenge. I got the record corrected. And sometimes that's the louder ending.